Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back to Inspiring Beauty and Believers. I'm Song. And today I wanted to have a little bit of a different talk with you guys. So we know that it's National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, right? But it is also National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. It's all these different months, awareness months in the same month. So if you've never seen my video that I did last year about infant loss and miscarriage and stuff, I'll link it above later when I go back into this video. But I wanted to talk to you about something that not a lot of people talk about, like, when does your heart heal from this? And this is actually going to be part of my, daily messages. So this is day 17. But I want to talk to you about when does your heart heal? So for those of you who have not seen that video where I shared my story about miscarriage, and I'll just share a little bit about that. So 2 years ago, almost coming up on 3 years ago, in January of 2019. Well, I got pregnant 2018. I found out in December. We went to the doctor and things. And of course, everybody wants to try to call me when I'm trying to do this. Okay, so side note, if you have a MacBook and an iPhone and you're like right next to each other, every time somebody calls you, make sure you put your phone on do not disturb and it won't mess up your screen because it's connected. Anyways, so in December of 2018, I found out that I was pregnant. And we were really excited. We had just, recently that year gotten married and stuff. And so we already had 4 kids. I only had 2 biologically, but we had 4. And so this was going to be 5, and it was going to be like, everything is complete. So we went to the doctor on Christmas Eve and to get an ultrasound and stuff. And at that time, they told me that the baby was not growing the way it should have been, that, it was smaller than it was supposed to be, and they were just going to keep an eye on it, but they didn't think that the baby was going to survive. So as a Christian, I automatically started praying, and I was like, nope, my baby is going to survive. Baby shall live and not die, and all these different things, speaking the word and stuff. And we went back to the doctor on the 5th of January to get another ultrasound done. And at that time, they said, well, the baby's heart has stopped beating. And I was like, this is not what I was believing for. So I don't understand what's going on. And I was like, nope, my baby's heart is going to start beating again. This is not going to happen, because I had never been through, losing a child. And I was like, this is not going to happen. I've had 2 other healthy children. I'm not going to lose this baby. So on January 9th, I started bleeding, because after they told me the baby's heart wasn't beating, they said, well, we just have to wait for you to pass the baby out because it's not a viable pregnancy. And so I was still praying, still like, God, you're going to come through. You're going to save my baby. All of these things that I was believing for. And then on January 9th, I was at work and I started bleeding. And, I was like, God, this cannot be happening to me. But I left work. I told my boss, I was like, I got to go because I'm bleeding. So I need to go to the hospital. Went to the ER, sat there for hours before they would even see me. And it was the most miserable experience ever. But anyways, so when they finally got me in a couple hours later, they did an ultrasound and they said, well, your cervix is not completely open yet, but you're obviously in the process of miscarrying. And so, just go home and try to relax. Horrible, horrible, horrible experience. But, the next morning I tried to get up and get dressed to go to work, but I was exhausted. And so I couldn't hardly even really move. And so my husband at that time was like, yeah, you just need to go back to sleep. So he ended up going to work. Um, and I stayed there in bed. I kept bleeding. But I was like, well, it's not a lot of blood. So later that day, I started hemorrhaging and it became a lot of blood, to the point where, I was sitting in the bathroom and I know this is kind of graphic, guys, but this is what it is. Um, I started having like clots and huge clots of, just coming out. Um, but it wasn't until like the next time I went, so this is like about the third time I went to the bathroom, and I was all alone at home by myself. And I was having these horrible contractions. Like I've been in labor before. I know what it feels like to have contractions and be at that moment where you have to push. And so in my mind, I'm telling myself, don't push the baby out. But my body is contracting and it's like, no, we need to push, we need to push. And so right there in the bathroom, I contracted and pushed, and then this sack came out, and I just cried. And I felt so alone, like not just was I physically alone, but like, God, what happened? Why did you let this happen? Why is my baby not going to be here? And I just stared and, looking at the little sack, and I was like, this has to be like a nightmare or something. This can't be happening to me. And then just out of habit, then I flushed the toilet. Um, and when I finally got in touch with my ex, one of my friends, I got in touch with her. She came and she took me back to the ER, and she got in touch with him finally. And then he showed up. They did another ultrasound and checked, and it was like, yeah, the baby is gone. And then that's when it like hit me. Like I flushed my baby down the toilet and I just like lost it. Um, and so after that, I went through a lot of depression, a lot of anger with God. Like, God, why would you allow this to happen? Why didn't you save my baby? That's what I was praying for. How come you couldn't, show up for me in that place? And it was a really hard time for me. And then and so after that I went through a lot. It was a really hard time for me. And about 7 weeks after that, no, maybe, yeah, maybe about 6 weeks after that, after my body went through the process of healing, and recovery, I ended up getting pregnant again. And that was with my daughter. So then I went through this psychological battle of I'm still grieving the loss of one child. And now I have to, try to focus on this other child that I'm carrying, and what happens if it happens again, and how do I process this? And then I'm dealing with all this fear of I don't want this to happen anymore. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. God, I need help. It was really hard. And to combat with that, I was also dealing with being in a domestic violence situation where it was emotionally abusive, psychologically abusive, and things. And so I'm trying to like walk on eggshells, not deal with that stuff, try to fix my marriage, try to keep my kids, sane and emotionally okay, and be pregnant. So I never really got to fully grieve, you know, over that child. I just had to, in a sense, suppress those feelings. So coming back around to this now, almost 2 years later, I wanted to get on and talk about this for those of you who have gone through miscarriage or infant loss. because there's again in the video that we did last year, one of my guests, my cousin, she talks about having to give birth to her babies and then they died, you know, a few minutes after that. And so when you go through those things, sometimes, especially as believers, people tell you, oh, well, they're in heaven, they're in a better place now. You just need to be happy about that and just move past it. And even though the whole rest of the world seems like they move on, it's one of those things that doesn't really ever leave a mother's heart. You always have those feelings of, what would that child be doing now? What would they be like? What would their smile be like? What would their laugh be like? Especially if you have other children and you see their siblings and then you wonder how they would interact with their siblings, just all of these things that you think about. And so I talked to a friend of mine and they had went through losing, children, and they told me this is something that encouraged me because they were like one of the only people who ever told me, you know, the pain doesn't ever really leave, it just changes. And they said it had been 10 years and they still thought about that child. So I want to encourage you, it's okay. It is okay if you still think about the loss, if you still think about the life that you would have had with that child. God knows, He understands. And it's not really any words that somebody can give you that will make it better. I had a lot of people tell me a whole lot of things. None of it made it better. It made me process things differently. I had somebody tell me maybe, you know, because my baby would have been born with some kind of issue that I was being spared that. But in reality, as for me as a mother, I would have accepted my child anyway, just to not have to have lost them, not to have had that hope that, oh, I'm pregnant and I'm going to be able to bring a child into this world and then only to turn around and lose them and then go through all of the what ifs of, what would that child have been like. So I don't cry anymore about it. But I do think about my baby often. I do consider the fact that I do have a child in heaven and that one day I hope to be able to see that baby um, when I get up there and be able to hold my baby and you know I know some people believe that if you lose a child then the child comes back in a different child that you have, but there are people who never have a child and they go through loss after loss after loss. What about those people? Do they never get to have a child? Um, I've heard different things, people who they suffered multiple loss and then God placed it on their heart to adopt children. And if they recognize if they had never gone through those loss, they would have never thought about adopting other children that were in need. So it's a lot of things that, you can consider, and nobody can really tell you how to grieve the loss of your child. Um, you have to go through your own grieving process. You have to find a place of peace inside of you that says, I may not have all the answers. I may not ever know why this happened to me, but and why other people are having babies that you may sometimes feel like why do they get to have kids, they are unfit, they are this, they are that, because those thoughts went through my mind too. But in those things I had to learn, don't compare my life to other people's lives, because I don't know the reason why they get to keep their baby and they seem like they don't even want to have a baby, versus I really wanted mine and I couldn't keep that baby. But it made me more thankful and more more grateful for the cherished moments of being a mother, because in reality you could lose that whole experience within seconds. And so it makes me cherish the moments that I have with my kids now, makes me cherish even when they drive me crazy sometimes. I'm thankful that they're here. I'm thankful that they're a blessing to me, and that I get to pour into their life, that I get to watch them grow up and experience those things. But even with my daughter, who's my rainbow baby, um, even she doesn't replace the child that was lost. And would never put that burden on her to try to make up for the child that I lost. So I hope that this is encouraging. I know it's different than what I normally do, but I just want you to know that God hears your heart. He sees your tears. Um, he knows that you're angry, and he just wants you to bring that to him. It's not that, he doesn't want you to have feelings about this or suppress your feelings. He wants you to bring those feelings to him in that time. And that's really what brought me healing in it. And like I said, the hurt, it just transitioned in a different way. I don't cry about it anymore, but I still think about my child often. I still think about the things that were lost to me. But I'm grateful and blessed to have the kids that I have now. And it helps me to understand other people when they've gone through that situation. So I don't say things like other people said to me, like, well, they're in a better place now. Well, the better place would have been here with me in my, and that's how I feel. So, or God needed another angel. Well, I don't believe that. So there's a lot of angels out there. He could have created another angel. He didn't have to take a child. And so I don't want you going thinking God is just taking people's kids, because he needs another angel. Um, God, he doesn't he doesn't kill, he doesn't steal, he doesn't destroy. That's the enemy. The enemy plots to always destroy everything that we have, and we just have to realize that life is found in Christ. And though we may not always understand why these things have to happen, or what the reason is behind it, know that God makes all things new, and that he loves you and he has a plan for you. And it may not look like the plan that you originally wanted, but it's going to be a good plan. So give your pain, your hurt to him. Allow him to love you and fill in those broken pieces in your heart, and just trust him that he has a great plan in store for you. I love you guys, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I hope it is an encouragement to anybody who's ever gone through this.